can say is that the fake news just doesn't get it, do they? First, nobody likes the war in Ukraine, and we don't want Russia in there. They shouldn't have done this, okay? But I don't like the fake news. I don't trust them. Sometimes they lie, and sometimes a lot, they just don't get it. They don't know what they're talking about. You know, for many years, we've been told that Vladimir Putin was some sort of strategic genius, right? You saw it, I saw it, everybody saw it. Now he's a monster. He's the worst thing that ever happened. He's crazy, all those things. I noticed the fake news, very little consistency. I mean, they can turn on a dime. When Mitt Romney, of all people, raised the issue of Russia's threat to us, well, first of all, he did that. Do you remember?
Russia. This is, without question, our number one geopolitical foe. They fight every cause for the world's worst actors.
Oh, the swamp scoffed Mitt Romney. What a buffoon.
Mitt Romney calling Russia our greatest geopolitical foe, for heaven's sakes, when we ought to be working with Russia to bring about a peaceful resolution.
The world was probably watching tonight, and they were probably confused about Mitt Romney's positions on foreign policy, creating huge blunders, calling Russia our greatest geopolitical foe.
He goes on to talk about how Russia is actually the United States' #1 geopolitical foe. Really, Romney? You do know we're not in the Cold War anymore.
A few months ago, when you were asked what's the biggest geopolitical threat facing America, you said Russia. Not Al-Qaeda, you said Russia. In the 1980s are now calling to ask for their foreign policy back because, the Cold War has been over for 20 years.
Ha 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 ha. I am no Romney fan, but he was more right than wrong, a lot more right than wrong. And now we're back to the biggest threat in the world is Russia. Everybody seems to understand that. He's talking about a nuclear showdown. But again, the media is so wildly inconsistent and they change so much. 10 days ago, was it 10 days ago? Zelensky was a clown. The comedian turned president is seriously in over his head. And now, and I quite frankly think he's doing a great job. Have you seen him? He's literally leading his country. And he's become an international sensation. He has inspired a planet. Look at this guy. It's, well, that's a meme, but look, he seems to be doing very well. But this is more complex than most of us realize, including and especially me. The situation over there goes back centuries, but our fake news always plays it, especially the ones who are dishonest. They have to have a narrative, a story that they can understand.
The world is seeing civilians being killed in Ukraine by Russian bombs. The world is hearing the lies Russia is telling about those attacks. The world is uniting to condemn those attacks and those lies. How can you defend them?
That's a pretty loaded question. There are ways to get information out of the foreign minister without calling him a liar to his face. But what did he say?
I cannot comment conjectures, and there is a great deal of these now. But, if you paid your attention probably to the fact that Europe, mostly and the United States, are trying to close down all the outlets, media outlets and information sources broadcast by Russia and from Russia on how the special military operation progresses and advances and how the Ukrainian army and the neo-Nazi...
He goes on for about 45 minutes. Whether it's the interpretation or what he's saying, it's extremely hard to follow. And then they start citing history and these ancient disputes. But our media system is not equipped to really understand this. Now, as individuals, we can spend all the time in the world on it if we have the time, if we want to. Most people can't. I do know that some significant things, though, are being missed in this story. And again, I wish Russia had not done this. But, we hear so much about racism in America. What about racism in Eastern Europe? What about racism in Ukraine?
I'm there were some reports about discrimination of people with Arabic or African roots. What can you tell us about that? Is this true? Did you experience something like this?
Yes, I experienced that. There's a lot of hostility from the white women. They really don't like us to be in the train. Somebody was telling me I have to stand up, I have to go out. If I'm not a Ukrainian, I shouldn't be in the train of a Ukrainian. I should find anywhere I should go to. So it's really, really, really sad that we have to face this. And they prefer their pets, their animals, even before a black man or a black woman. So it's really sad.
Really sad. It's not just that foreign news reporter who's investigating this. Rolling Stone magazine actually did a piece about what's being described as ugly racism, people left stranded because of the color of their skin, and so on and so on. The African Union actually put out a statement condemning all of this. Reports that Africans are singled out for unacceptable dissimilar treatment would be shockingly racist and in breach of international law. Show the same empathy and support to all people fleeing war, notwithstanding their racial identity. There's also the issue of anti-Semitism inside Ukraine. Wow, this is quite a poll. 46%, according to the Anti-Defamation League, of Ukrainians harbor anti-Semitic attitudes. Now, Zelensky himself happens to be Jewish. This is to say that the situation is far more complex than the fake news, easy, good versus evil narrative might suggest. And again, we know this would not be happening if President Trump were still in office. Americans understand that. But did they understand this? At the expansion of NATO at the end of the Cold War, which was, well, very, very popular, and many believe done somewhat thoughtlessly. Some Cold War experts weighed in even at the time that this was a major, major mistake and could be quite provocative, and Russia would not like it and might do something like it's doing right now. This is Ambassador Matlock. He was a Reagan and Bush administration official. He warned many years ago that NATO expansion was the most profound strategic blunder made since the end of the Cold War. He considered the administration's recommendation to take new members into NATO as misguided. It may well go down, he said, in history as the most profound strategic blunder made since the end of the Cold War. Far from improving the security of the United States, its allies, and the nations that wish to enter the alliance, it could well encourage a chain of events that could produce the most serious security threat to this nation since the Soviet Union collapse. George Kennan might be the architect of Cold War strategy, wrote this. We have signed up to protect a whole series of nations, even though we have neither the resources nor the intention to do so in any serious way. NATO expansion was simply a lighthearted action by a Senate that has no real interest in foreign affairs. What bothers me is how superficial and ill-informed the whole Senate debate was. I was particularly bothered by the references to Russia as a country dying to attack Western Europe. Don't people understand our differences in the Cold War were with the Soviet communist regime, and now we are turning our backs on the very people who mounted the greatest bloodless revolution in history to remove that Soviet regime? It's complicated. It's complicated. And now we have a full-fledged war on our hands. I hear that they have brokered an agreement for safe passage of refugees and humanitarian aid. Let's wish those negotiators great success as they try to broker an end to all of this. We'll be right back.